And my name is Mark Moyer. I attended Colgate University, graduated there back in a long time ago. And I'm excited to have plenty of my fellow alumni here at the event, but also people from around the country and around the world. But thanks everyone for being here once again. I'm the founder of the Win Again Academy, and again, just a quick word about that. It's a place. It's the home for athletes to come to number one, really learn about a lot of the things that they didn't have a chance to learn while they're playing. Number two is to really expand their network of people that are really significant in industry across the board. But number three, also just sort of feel like they're back in the locker room again, feel that semblance of a community. And I will be hosting monthly hockey night events. That's a little secret that I'm letting out now. And I'll be doing probably some other sports, but best of all, throughout the week, there are also events that everyone's welcome to attend. And so I'll be telling you more about upcoming events a little bit later, but we do have two next week, Tuesday and Thursday, and I'll put information in the general chat about that. One other thing before I bring in my fabulous speakers, in the there's obviously the chat room there. You can put all kinds of stuff in there if you want, but also on the right, you'll see there's a list of the participants, and then also there's a Q&A section. So if you have any questions for any of the three of us who are going to be speaking in a sec, please feel free to put those in there. But once again, I really appreciate you being here. I hope you're having a great time, and I hope you have a chance to really come out of this with at least 2 or 3 or 4 or more new friends and acquaintances that you can continue talking to down the road and meet again here in the club room or outside of the club room. So with all that said, I'm going to bring in my 2 pals. Number 1 is going to be Grant, and I'm going to do the intro once they're in. Grant, come on in, and then Matt, come on in. Here we go.
I'm happy to be pal number 1.
Yeah, you are 1.5. You're tied with Matt. We're doing both at once because I don't have that kind of, I can't multitask. But anyway, so I'm going to do a little bit of a bio for both of you guys that I found on the internet, so it's got to be true. Because I really don't know you guys at all, but if I did know you. So Matt right now is doing business development for a company that, I mean, they're called Firmex, but and it's up in Toronto area, correct? Did I do that right, Matt?
Yep, so far so good.
And they do stuff that's really cool, but I'm going to have him tell you about it in a few minutes. But Matt was back in 2005, which was like 3 or 4 years ago. He was a first-round pick by the Calgary Flames. He debuted a few years later, back in 2009, and then pretty exciting, 3 nights later, scored his first point, I think, and then scored his first goal a couple of years after that versus a future Hall of Famer, Roberto Luongo, I believe it was. But what's interesting about Matt and his career is if you look at his stats from all that stuff put together, he was a really quiet guy. He didn't really, and barely ever in the penalty box. 11.53 minutes, 11.53 minutes, which is really interesting. Oh, wait a minute, the decimal's in the wrong spot. 1,153 minutes. So I don't know what that is in terms of how many games he spent in the penalty box, but he enjoyed it. That's his way of resting in between shifts. But more interesting, he played also a few seasons overseas in Europe, and I can't wait to hear some more stories about that. And he's just recently retired, although I suspect he's going to come back, but he's not telling anybody about that yet. So he managed to, I think, take a canoe or some sort of sailboat or something back from Ireland and England back to Toronto. So he's there now safely. How'd I do with that so far?
So far, so good. A lot of penalty minutes because I wasn't really good enough to fill up the stat box anywhere else. So I essentially got punched in the face for about 14 years for a living, which sounds a lot worse than it was.
But good news, you can continue getting that happen to you and at work now. So that's, oh no, I'm sure you're in a very easy job. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a minute, Matt. And then Grant, different story a little bit, right? You were the scorer. No, you were both defensemen though. But you were there for your defensive prowess. But you're a director of career transition for After the Game, which is part of One Sports based in Canada, or no, they're based here. Wait, where are they based?
So One Sports is based in Toronto. Our parent company, One Capital, is based in Westlake Village, California, which is right near LA.
Gotcha. And he's grants passing all kinds of different licenses and things like that. So he can basically take your money and make you a lot more money, I think is the plan. Was a 9th round pick for the Blue Jackets back in '04, so just a year or so before Matt, and made the ill-advised decision to attend Clarkson University and play there. Got a lot of Colgate guys here, so I you're getting enough. Anyway,
against in this chat, so I shouldn't say too much.
We'll talk about that later. Anyway, had a couple of assists on his debut game, and he scored his first goal against Wayne Rollis, and one of my, I don't know, he's a goalie for the Islanders, right? Anyway, and then unfortunately had to retire a few years ago because of a back injury, but he's made the most of it. And he's also, his family and him are, I'm going to get this all wrong, but I remember it. You did go to school to become a sommelier, which is really cool. And you are tell me about the cidery. Is it a family-owned business, the cidery?
Yeah, it's a family farm, and we kind of started, it's an apple orchard, and we started an apple cidery from the ground up. So we just, once I retired, I was kind of looking for projects, and they had all these apples, so we decided to start a cidery.
That's awesome. So let me just, I'm just going to throw a couple quick questions at you guys, just to talk a little bit more about what I want to touch on today is really your story of your transition, and what are some of the things that you were happy you did while you played that were not necessarily involving hockey, and some of the things you wish you had done, and talk a little bit about that transition experience. I'll start with Matt, because Matt was more recent, his experience.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of guys in here can attest that while you're playing, thinking about what you're going to do next is kind of scary. And it's something that usually gets put off until you're actually done playing and you're scrambling and you're trying to figure out what's next. This year with COVID and with a lot of leagues not going, a lot of guys didn't really have a choice. It wasn't something you could plan for to be done, and a lot of guys were forced out of the game. So the biggest thing looking back, I was fortunate with my transition that things kind of fell into place at the right time, but being able to immerse yourself in something that you're interested in while you're playing, even talking to Kyle, he was telling us about him and his wife have a real estate business that was something that was started while he was playing. So whatever it is that you're interested in, I do think it's important to find that while you're still playing, immerse yourself in that in whatever way you want. Like, you don't have to be an expert in, for instance, my one brother is a huge foodie, and immersing himself in that kind of foodie world, and with the attention that he can get through, his profile as an NHL player is something that could, kind of get him through that transition phase, and let him find something that he enjoys doing. So for me, I went to school while I was playing, which was great. It was a good start, but I didn't start having the meaningful conversations that kind of led to me getting my job after hockey until I immersed myself in a project in the craft beer industry, kind of doing top of funnel, tip of the spear sales in the craft beer industry on an internship basis. And as soon as I did something like that, I got involved in something I was interested in. I started having meaningful conversations with people not only in that industry, but just people in the sales industry in general. It was really a Kickstarter for me. No one really cared that I was a hockey player, that I went to school. It didn't differentiate me at all when I was trying to find opportunities for myself. So I'm happy I did it, better late than never. But the amount of time we have as athletes on our hands while we're playing professional hockey, it's so underused when you look back, and there's a lot of ways to be productive, whether it's building a network and connecting with as many people as you can. And like I said, just finding something that you're interested in and diving headfirst into it, whether you're an expert or not.
That's great. How about you, Grant?
Yeah, well, thanks, Matt. I mean, I think you touched on so many valuable points. Mine was a little different. I think, I had my schooling before I went pro. And so the idea behind that was, well, great, I got a backup plan if it doesn't work out. And actually, initially, school was my plan. I didn't think it would work out. So it working out was kind of a bit of a bonus. And then you kind of sit on that your whole pro career and you're like, well, I have a degree, I'll be fine when I'm done. And, to Matt's point, there's so much time on your hands, and so many guys will use the excuse of, oh, I'm tired, oh, I got to do this, or, they get caught up playing video games or doing whatever they do. And I think there's so many opportunities to really take advantage of that time. So, unfortunately, I don't think I really did. I mean, I got interested in wine and the sommelier stuff, and I kind of started to pick that up towards the end of my career. But that was when I was already injured and not really playing that much. So it was more kind of even more time on my hands trying to fill the void. And so when I stopped playing, it was really, now what? And I wish I would have started thinking about that a lot sooner. So when my career ended, it was just, okay, I don't know what I want to do. I have all these interests. I have a degree, but I've been out of school for 10 years, so it's not really doing much for me. And so I just decided to keep busy. I think one of the things that really helped me was like jumping into things and trying stuff and keep moving forward and kind of see what sticks and what doesn't. And hopefully kind of go down a path by elimination and eventually get to a point where you're starting to really figure out your interests and your skills and what you're good at, and connect with people, meet people, and especially kind of outside your comfort zone. I think that's what helped me a lot. I went back to school and I did my MBA, and it was an executive MBA. So it was a cohort of people from 25 years old to up to 60 years old, all with completely different work backgrounds, work experiences. And that was a huge eye opener for me. Like, I was the only athlete in the room. So to be able to kind of put myself in a room with all these people with so many different backgrounds and experiences was so great for me. And I think it helped me a lot. Just kind of figuring out what jobs are out there, what people do, different experiences they have. And it gave me a lot of confidence too, because I started to realize kind of the skills I had developed over a lifetime of being an athlete were very applicable in the real world, in the business world. And so, so I think my transition was a little bit different. I think it was a little bit more prolonged until I kind of got into doing things that I really want to do. But I tried different things and learned from it. But I think, to Matt's point, one of the most important things that he touched on, which I think is so underutilized, is the leveraging your connections while you're playing. Like, you're in an environment where you're exposed to so many important, powerful decision makers of all different kinds of companies that pay money to sponsor your team and sit at your table at charity events. And you have, I mean, all the ex-players in this chat know how many times a year you have to go to those things, and most guys dread it. Most guys are like, I don't want to go sit at a table and talk to somebody I don't know. And I'll call Jim out on this. Jim Slater is in the chat. He's one of the best I've seen at work in a room in the hockey world, because he was himself. He would just strike up conversations with other people, and he was curious, and I'm sure it led to so many great connections. And I tell guys that I work with now and that I played with all the time, like, you leverage that opportunity, because when you're done, it's a lot harder to get your foot in the door.
That's a great answer, both of you guys. And so, one of the things that I like to tell people is that most athletes, virtual athletes, they don't want to hear about a plan B when they're playing. I mean, plan A is plan A, and that's the entire focus. And it's almost like a bad luck thing, that if you start planning for your retirement, then you're going to retire a lot sooner. So I tell people all the time that your performance, in this case on the ice, is going to improve when you actually know subconsciously that you're all set in case something bad happens, or in case you get cut, or in case whatever happens. So, but as Grant was saying, it's something where if you develop a secondary interest versus, and Matt, you're saying this too, versus, saying, okay, well, when I retire, I'm going to be in real estate, or I'm going to be a banker, or I'm going to be a sommelier, or whatever it is. But instead, you take on an interest while you're still playing. And again, it can be while you're a student athlete, amateur, professional, doesn't matter what level. But as long as you have something else that keeps you interested, engaged, and excited, it's something that you can carry into your next career. And even if it's something that is a stopgap until your next career, I think that's great. So fantastic feedback, gentlemen. So for your post-career now, give me an idea of, maybe a couple of the skills that you developed as an athlete that you had no idea necessarily that they would translate well into your current career, but you're finding out now they do. Matt.
For me, I'm in sales, so I think the biggest transferable skill, I guess, would be resilience. As a hockey player, you're constantly failing, right? If you're not failing, or if you're not trying to improve every day, you're getting stuck. So dealing with failure and kind of be able to get up and get after it again after a bad shift, a bad game, a bad year, whatever it is. Sales is volume and percentages, right? You're not gonna be successful on every call, on every meeting, on every demo. So the fact that we're used to dealing with failing and dealing without being, you're not going to win a championship every year. You're not going to win every single night you suit up. So I think that's something that, especially these days, a lot of people don't know how to deal with failure, and a lot of people don't know how to get back up and brush yourself off and try to do it again. And for sales, that's on the next call, that's on the next meeting, that's immediately, right? So you don't have any time to feel sorry for yourself or sulk or take a call off. So it's in my world now, I'd say that's the biggest thing that I developed as an athlete that benefits me now.
Oh, that's great. How about you, Grant?
I got a few. I think one of them, obviously, teamwork. That's kind of a no-brainer. But it's not just teamwork. It's kind of identifying different personalities and different people's strengths, different people's skills, and then seeing how they mesh together and how you can better utilize those skills and strengths. I think that's something I noticed pretty quickly when I started doing the school program there. But the other one I think is drive. I think a lot of athletes have that innate drive, that work ethic, that kind of desire to continuously improve and get better. Kind of touching on Matt's point too, like that need to take that criticism and failure and build off it and get better and work at being the best you can be. That's something that, to get to the level that a lot of these guys in this chat have gotten to, have had to have. However, I think one of the biggest challenges is when you retire, you have all that piss and vinegar, for lack of a better term, and no direction. And I think that's what gets frustrating, is kind of wanting to improve, wanting to get better, wanting to move forward, but not knowing how to channel that. So yeah, I think those are the skills I think athletes can bring to the table for sure.
You know what, let me throw in a couple of real quick ones that I happen to have done some work with this sort of thing in the last few years. But one of them is the ability to be coached. And I think sometimes athletes don't really understand the value of that necessarily because they've been coached their whole careers and their lives. But most non-athletes have not been coached throughout their careers and their lives. And what I mean by that is the ability to take direction and run with it when you know that there's a potential success at the other side of it. So, you guys will be better skaters if you do this. Well, then okay, well, I can see other people are becoming better skaters. So if I do this particular drill skating backwards, I'll be a better defenseman that way. So that's a big skill. And the other one is, and you guys touched on it a little bit, the tenacity and sort of the grit and so forth to fight through, whenever there's a challenging project in front of you. But the other thing I like to talk about is that sometimes you guys don't necessarily notice as much is the comfort level that you have in front of the spotlight, in front of the, whether, you've been interviewed before, you've spoken, and you've been on a big stage before, that sort of thing. 95% of the public has not been on a stage. They're nervous as all hell, speaking in front of people or presenting or whatever it might be. And that's something that all athletes do tend to bring with them. Even if they may have a shy personality, they've been on the big stage and they've performed under pressure, which is a huge, huge benefit that every athlete brings with them. So all great stuff. You guys are awesome at giving the advice here. I love it. So, just a couple more minutes. I want to just cover, maybe Matt, if you could offer one more, you talked earlier about some of the advice you had, but if you were to talk also to even some retired men and women out there who maybe played a while ago, and maybe they're in something they're not necessarily thrilled with. I mean, what are some of the things they can do to really, whether it's grow their network or just sort of elevate their careers and their businesses?
one of the things is being comfortable being out of your comfort level. Like if you're doing something that you're not enjoying, like that's, especially if it's a 9 to 5, like that's at the end of the day, that's just not worth it. And I don't have a lot of experience. I've been a hockey player up until a couple months ago, essentially. And I am enjoying what I'm doing now, but the first little bit, I talked about an internship I was involved with. I was extremely uncomfortable. I was calling up brewers and trying to get as many, have insightful conversations with these people. And, they've been in this industry for years. They're experts. And I was the person calling them who wasn't an expert, trying to learn as much as I can and soak up as much info as I can. And after a couple of weeks, not that I was on the same level, but I was able to have these meaningful conversations with these brewers about their business. And I was able to apply it to what the internship wanted me to do, as far as benchmarking these brewers, across the rest of the industry. It was something that, a year ago, I wasn't even thinking about doing anything related to top of funnel sales activities. I knew nothing about the craft beer industry other than the fact that I liked drinking craft beer. And a year later, I'm having meaningful conversations with people that have been running a brewery for 20 years. So, for me, it was just accepting the fact that I'm going to be out of my comfort zone. My comfort zone was hockey. My comfort zone was the locker room. My comfort zone was being on the road and hanging out with my teammates. And it wasn't easy doing something that was new, doing something that I was nervous to do. But getting out of my comfort zone was by far the most beneficial thing that I did, to prepare for not only the job I'm doing now, but every time I make a change now for the rest of my life, it's going to be something uncomfortable. And I know that I've kind of been through that. So if I was doing something, if I end up not enjoying what I'm doing, I at least know that, hey, I can leave my comfort zone and I can find something that I want to do.
Excellent answer. I love that. That's great. How about you, Grant?
Yeah, I think that's huge advice. And I would take it one step further with the comfort zone and not being afraid to connect with people and reaching out to, whether it's people in your network that you already know that might work for a company or an industry they might be interested in. Don't be shy to reach out and talk to them and ask them for advice. And usually that's a good conversation starter for leading to further conversations. And have you talked to this person? And, everybody's connected in so many different levels that it's amazing how far down the chain you can get pretty quick. And then I think the other thing is just don't be afraid to ask for help. I think a lot of times as athletes, we're proud. I think we're also intimidated. And Matt talking about the comfort zone, I think you can apply that on so many different levels. But not asking for help, I think, is a big issue that is so easily avoided. And there's so much help out there, and people so eager to help you. So knowing where to look, knowing who to talk to, but don't be afraid to ask.
Well, one of the big sources of that I like to talk about is interestingly, and I'm experiencing a little bit here tonight, but reach out to fellow alumni, reach out to fellow people that you have some sort of common bond with. I mean, Matt and Grant, you both have heard me talk incessantly about how important it is to really be on LinkedIn and to be able to reach out and connect with people directly who share your own, whether it's sharing a hometown or fellow hockey players or alums or whatever it might be. And, it's really important to, sort of reach out. And one of the things I like to say, Grant, is instead of asking for help, ask for advice, because then it makes it easier for you. Because I never like to ask help, because to me, it's like asking someone, hey, listen, can you help me move this giant couch or something? And they're like, no. But if you say, hey, listen, I need some advice. What's the best way to move this couch? They still might not want to help you, but at least you're asking their advice and they're willing to go the extra distance there. I don't know why. I just had a bad flashback of moving couches. Anyway, but also I think the most important thing to do is, with all of this stuff, is as you said, communicate, really speak. Get out there and meet people. And it's tough to do it now out there, so do it however you can, whether it's attending, of course, Clubroom events, etc. Little plug there, but also just being involved in, whether it's other industry events or association things or just alumni stuff, whatever it is, but just circulate a little bit more. It's a little more challenging nowadays with the virus stuff, but if you can do that, that's great. So before we jump, because I want to go back to the tables and be able to circulate around a bit more, two separate things. One, feel free to ask questions in the Q&A section. I'm going to ask yours, Ryan, in 1 second of Grant. But the other thing is, make sure you consider the idea of attending future Clubroom events. I think that you'll all see that this is a pretty exciting kind of event and thing to hang out in. It's certainly a lot more fun than a lot of the other ones where you have to watch a presentation like this, but then when it's done, you're done. It's peace out. So here we have a chance to circulate. Another thing is to make sure that everyone, I'll send an email out to everybody at the end, but make sure you connect with everybody. A lot of people have in their profiles their LinkedIn or their website or their, anything, but make sure you feel free to offer to connect with everybody. I already see that I've gotten a couple of invites here on my LinkedIn thing, so thanks for reaching out, folks. But anyway, Grant and Matt, is it okay if these folks at some point want to reach out to you and ask you for further advice down the road?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I might not have the best advice, but I'm willing to talk and have a conversation.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, look, so real quickly, Ryan's question was, what does the off season look like when you own a cider company, meaning when you are outside the main selling season, and what career roles support a successful cider company? Do you sell spiked cider? Of course you do.
Yeah, so we only make spiked cider. So I know in the States it's termed a little differently. I think it's called hard cider, alcoholic cider.
Yeah.
In Canada, we just call it cider. That's alcoholic, and then non-alcoholic we call apple juice. But yeah, the cider season is pretty much the fall is when we do all our picking and pressing, transform it to juice. Then it ferments for a couple months, kind of sits over the winter and spring. The end of spring is kind of the big bottling rush. And then we throw it on the shelves and sell it all summer and kind of rinse and repeat. So what skills? Well, we're tiny. It's my father-in-law and I, we do everything. So from picking to pressing to fermenting to bottling to selling to labeling, like we do everything. So it was quite the learning curve, really good business experience, way too much physical labor, and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. Actually, a lot of good beer went into making our cider.
That's pretty funny.
And no, it was a great experience. It was a really good thing for me to do right after hockey. It kept me busy, stimulated, learned a ton about everything, cider to business. So it was great.
Good. And Renata is asking, was there any organization inside the NHL that advised you on your chapter 2? In other words, what is, and Grant, you and I have definitely talked about this, and Matt a little bit. What is the NHL, whether it's the PA or retired players, whatever it is, what do they offer, or do they offer, and what was your experience with it?
So to answer your question, the PA does have a transition program. It's called the Core program. It is actually much more recent. So I retired 4 years ago, and I basically just retired, and then that was it. So I didn't have any outreach from anyone. Actually, my team was really good. The Jets, the owner, Mark Chipman, the GM, coach, all reached out to me after my career ended, and said if they could be of any help or assistance in the future, which was awesome. But I didn't get much from the union, unfortunately. I'll be the first to admit I wasn't that proactive either in reaching out to them. But since then, I think they've hired a few ex-players, and they're starting to put together a little bit more robust program. And I'm hopeful that players will have the support they need. And I think some of the players that are there now are doing a good job.
Right.
Yeah, I was mainly in the minor leagues, and I bounced around quite a bit down there. But the PHPA had a partnership with Athabasca University, which is an online Canadian university. So, you're able to take courses at a little bit of a discount. You have a advisor that kind of helps you pick and choose and piece stuff together. But to be honest, it wasn't the most useful program. It was great to be able to take some classes while you're playing, but as far as guidance and planning for what's next, there wasn't a lot of that. Even something as simple as recommending to someone to set up a LinkedIn page while they're playing, because Grant touched on it. You interact with so many people. You have 20 teammates every single year, more if you're in North America and you're in the minors and people are getting sent up, called down. You have sponsors, you have team events where you're meeting so many people. To compile that network, year after year as you're playing, is, a benefit that I didn't have, because I scrambled when I started when I did my MBA last year, saying I better set up a LinkedIn page and try to invite everyone that I can remember. So, little things like that never get mentioned and never get touched upon, things that really will pay dividends down the road, where it's great to have the opportunity to do some online schooling through the PA, but it's not anything different that if you didn't have a PA, you could still access all those things. So there's all those little nuances that I don't think they do a good job of bringing up and kind of explaining the benefit to guys.
Well, I'm just curious about something. Would either of you guys recommend that, whether it's the NHL, PA, retired players, etc., the union, or the PHPA, insist that their players read this book? And again, what do you think? Product placement. But that's one of the things that I like to talk about, and I'm going to put in a shameless plug here. But this book is all about obviously doing things like setting up a LinkedIn profile and how to network and how to interview and all that stuff. And a big reason why I'm doing all of this is I heard stories like Grant's and like Matt's and so forth, that when I'd hear that, and this is in all the sports and the U.S. Olympic Committee, NCAA, et cetera, that a lot of their programming is very click-centric, but it's not an outreach. It's not a, hey, Grant, now that you're retired, tell you what, we're happy to set you up with an hour or two of, just chatting with somebody, and they can give you some advice on what to do next. And that's something that I believe very, very strongly is really helpful and needed, because quite frankly, just sending someone a link, or even not sending them, just saying, look, go to this website and check it out and watch a couple of videos, doesn't really get people too fired up. And they're like, well, screw that, I'll just sit on the couch and play video games or something. So, and Grant, you've been hearing this pitch from me for a while now, but that's something that I'm pretty passionate about. And I'd love to hear if at some point, and we'll talk about it later, but if a lot of us in this room can really start talking to some of the entities that are involved, whether it's, again, collegiate, amateur, Olympics, professional, and just start getting more programming that involves a community, involves bringing the players together, but also involves more of an outreach and more of a just one-on-one stuff instead of a clicking on. I'm getting pretty passionate about that, but I think that that's something that's really lacking. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that's something we've been trying to do, and that's pretty much why my firm One Sports brought me on with After the Game, was really just like Matt really touched on it. I think one of the biggest problems with pro hockey is that it's easy to fall through the cracks. We have a lot of clients that or players that I used to play with that played in the NHL, but then maybe they played in the AHL, and then maybe they went and played in Europe for the last 4 or 5 years, and then retired at 35, but nobody from the NHL or the NHLPA or the PHPA know that, and nobody's going to reach out to them. And then these players are stuck saying, okay, now what? And I had all these resources, but now I don't anymore. So yeah, that's exactly it. We're trying to fill that void for our clients at our company by really being proactive and helping to be that support and try and help them through the process and let them know about all the different resources that are available. So yeah, I think it's an issue for sure.
I love the idea of your organization and especially the fact that you're a player that's been through it. I think that speaks a lot louder when you have someone that played, and you could relate to, the people that you are still playing, that you're talking to, that, hey, I was in your shoes. They can relate to you. They can, see your story and what happened and how you transition. I think that is something that's really beneficial, that I don't know if the NHL is doing it now or the PA is doing it now, but bringing in ex-players that have been through it to, be able to relate to the players that are playing now, because they, realistically, when you're a kid and you're just starting playing out hockey, like, you're not going to listen to someone that just comes in that's never been in your shoes, that's telling you to do this and do that. You're just worrying about playing and trying to climb the ladder. So having ex-players and someone like yourself doing that outreach and connecting with people that are still playing, I think is a huge benefit.
Yeah, well done. Well, listen, gentlemen, I really appreciate your time. We're going to jump back to the tables. Renata Players Association is PA, and then the PHPA is the Professional Hockey Players Association, I believe. NHLPA is NHLPA. I think we got any other acronyms, gentlemen? I think we're good, right? But anyway, thanks again for being on board. I really appreciate it. I think the world of both of you guys. You're both, great guys, and both of you had a it's great to hear your explanation and talking about your experiences with your transition. I hope it's motivating some of the other folks that are in this room. But let's go back to the tables now and say hello to everybody. Oh, one last little public service announcement. There are a couple of upcoming events next week. Next Tuesday with Marielle Miller. She's talking about, and I had no idea about all this stuff, but actually franchising and how you can get involved in buying a bunch of Tim Hortons, I guess. I'll use a Canadian, probably the best donuts in the world. Are they, or not really? No comment? You guys don't eat donuts, I know.
No.
Of course. But anyway, and then I'm going to be talking next Thursday about how to find the job of your dreams and a lot of the stuff that goes into that, and how to figure out what to do next and why you should do it next. But in the meantime, and feel free to register. I'll put the links in the general chat there a little bit later. But otherwise now, let's, thanks again, gentlemen. I really appreciate it.
Mark, I just want to say thanks also, and also wanted to give you a little plug that actually when I started my current role, your book was the first book I read to kind of give me some guidance, and it's a very good practical guide to all the little things that Matt pointed out that you just don't get when you're playing. So it was a great read, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, wow. I read it a little too late. I put a resume together before I read the book, so I didn't follow all the instructions because I was behind the 8 ball a little bit.
That's right. When I told you that there was going to be a quiz on chapter 8, I was joking because I don't even know what chapter 8 is. But anyway, well, thanks for that. I really appreciate it, guys. Well, look, we're going to go back in, and hopefully everybody has a chance to hang out as long as you want. There's this event is wide open as long as people are hanging out, so feel free to hang out as long as you want. But otherwise, if you need to go watch some baseball or whatever else it might be, feel free to do that too. But thanks again, gentlemen, for being here, and we'll go back. Thanks.
Thanks.